Welcome to the second video where I'm looking at my old Akai GXC-39D cassette deck. In the last video I replaced all the belts and the deck was basically working, but it was running slowly and the speed was very irregular. So in this video I'm going to try replacing the motor run capacitor and hope that that sorts the speed problems out. I've bought a hopefully suitable replacement capacitor on eBay. But additionally, one of the belts I fitted felt much too tight, even though I had bought a belt kit specifically for this deck. I think that belt's too tight. So I'm going to try replacing that belt with a larger one, and I've actually got one that matches the specification given in the service manual, so hopefully that will be a better fit for that belt. So let's get that done first. I'll skip over the disassembly and reassembly of the deck in this video because I went through that a couple of times in part 1, so I won't bore you with all that again. If anything, that feels a little bit too loose now, but we'll go with it. In fact, I think I might clean that a bit and put a bit of new grease on there. Just clean the capstan shaft a little bit as well while I've got it out. And I will put a tiny drop of oil on there as well. Oops. Oh, it's not on the motor pulley, look. That's better. Right, let's give that belt a try. Yeah, it's fine. And that's, let's check the auto stop works. Yes, took a while, didn't it? It's quite a slow auto stop, isn't it? But that has improved the torque of the fast forward as well. So obviously that tight belt was dragging the reels. Anyway, that's good. Right, let's do the capacitor. I'll just remove them so I don't knock them off and lose them. Now there's the motor run capacitor. Doesn't look like it's leaked, does it? But I will put some gloves on before I start fiddling with that. Just a word of warning, very old motor run capacitors sometimes contain extremely toxic chemicals which can be absorbed through the skin. So please be very, very careful when handling these capacitors, especially if they've leaked. All I've succeeded in doing there is melting the sleeving over the lead. Oh, it's folded over, that's annoying. In fact, I might be better off just cutting the leads, to be honest. I'll just cut that through the sleeving. 1 microfarad, 350 working volts. And the new one is 1 microfarad, 450 volts. So that should be fine. Oh, of course there's a bit of sleeving on that one, isn't there? I forgot that. Bit of a wipe over with the good old IPA. Oops. I suppose the first test is, does it actually still run? Sounds okay. Yeah, it looks like it's running. Hooked it up to an amp, so let's see if we're getting any audio out of it. I forgot which one of these is eject. Well, that's pause, that one's eject. I can get a tape in. There we go. So that's good. Seems to be working, doesn't it? Okay, I've got the signal generator out because the next thing I'm going to try and do is calibrate this deck. But before I do that, I'll just see how it's doing on speed. It's a little bit pointless really because there doesn't seem to be any way of adjusting the speed, but we'll give it a try. And that's reading just fractionally over 3 kHz, 3.04-ish kHz, so that's absolutely fine. So I probably, even if I could, I wouldn't want to adjust that. So, next thing, let's get the service manual out and see how we go about calibrating this machine. Right, step one of the setup procedure is playback level adjustment, and to make that adjustment I need a 333Hz 0VU test tape. I haven't got one of them, so I'm going to have to try and make one. And to make one, I'm going to use this deck. It's a Yamaha GXC-39D, and of all the decks I've got, I think it's the one I trust most to be set up correctly. Really, I would have preferred to use this Tascam 122 Mark III, but sadly this machine isn't working at the moment. Now, this Yamaha deck uses 250 nanowebers per meter for 0 dB, and I'm pretty sure, although it doesn't say in the service manual, that the old Akai machine, which I'm trying to set up, would use 160 nanowebers per meter for 0 dB. Now, I've been doing a bit of Googling on this, and it seems that if I record on the Yamaha, or the 250 nanowebers per meter 0 dB deck, at minus 3.9 dB, that should give me 160 nanowebers per meter on the tape, which then should read 0 dB on the Akai. So I'm going to try that. I'm just going to use the other side of my 3 kHz tape for this. So we'll calibrate it. Right, so I've got this outputting half a volt, but we want 333 Hertz. Now, somehow I need to try and set this to minus 3.9. That's going to be a bit tricky, isn't it? Well, the first thing I can see is the balance is a little bit out. Let's see if we can get the balance a bit squarer. That's not too bad, is it? Now, 3.9, so I suppose, when it reads -4, and then just go up a little tiny bit more, that should give us roughly -3.9, I think. It's all a bit vague, isn't it? But we'll try that, I suppose, and see what happens. So in theory now, that should be recording 160 nanowebbers per metre on that tape. So let that run for a bit. Right, I think that'll do for a quick test. So I'll just go back a little bit. Yeah, so let's see what that reads in the Akai. That is pretty much bang on. That's right channel's maybe fractionally below 0, and the left channel's maybe fractionally above 0, but that's so close, I think that's pretty damn good. Right, so I'm not going to adjust the playback level. Another thing I can check, although again there isn't much point really because there's no way of adjusting it, is the actual output level, which using our 333Hz 0VU tape we've just created, we should get 0 dBm, which is 0.775 volts into a 600 ohm load. So to make a 600 ohm load, I'm going to use a potentiometer, 1K potentiometer. I'm going to use this multimeter because this claims to be true RMS, although over what frequency range we don't know, but probably for audio it'll be fine. So if I set that to ohms initially, we can set this pot to exactly 600 ohms, or as close as we can get to it. Oh, look at that, pretty much bang on 600 ohms. So if I flick to voltage, play our 0 dB tape, if I can get the probes onto the output leads, which is a bit fiddly. This is the left channel. We're getting about 0.83 of a volt, so it's a little bit high. A little bit high, but not too bad. And let's try the right channel. Is 0.79, 0.8. So again, a little bit high, but not too bad. Right, next thing we adjust is the recording level, which apparently we do by recording a 1 kHz tone at 0 VU on a low noise tape, and making sure that that plays back at 0 VU when we play that recording back. So let's try that. So 1 kHz at half a volt, and again I'll use the other side of my 3 kHz tape. I've wound it more into the middle because I want to keep my 333Hz 0 VU test tone just in case I need that again. Let's make sure. Yeah, that's fine. Right, now if we set these to 0 VU. Oh, the pots are a bit crackly, aren't they? We'll have to get some contact cleaner on them later on. So they are both spot on 0 VU. So let's just record that for a bit. Right, it's been recording for a minute or two now, so go back to 0 and play that tape back. What are we reading? Oh, we're reading high, aren't we? Both channels reading high, but left is slightly higher than right. So that does need adjusting. Now, according to this, to adjust the recording level, we have to adjust VR5 and VR5B for the right channel. So presumably what they expect you to do is make an adjustment to VR5, then try another test recording and see what you've changed, then make another adjustment to VR5 and just do a lot of trial and error like that. Seems like an awful lot of work. I wonder if there's an easier way of doing this. Right, I've flipped the deck over, so we're now looking at the bottom of the deck. They're not labelled, but that is VR5 and that is VR5B. So confusingly, that's the left channel and that's the right channel. So I'm just going to write them on here. So all this side is the left channel, all this side is the right channel. So I'm just going to mark them on there so I don't get confused, because they're kind of the wrong way round. So what I need to do is adjust these two pots to get the recording level right. Now, if I shine a torch underneath the circuit board, I can see where these are currently set. So what I'm going to do is make a little mark on the top of the board to show where each one is set. So if I mess it up completely, I should be able to return it to the exact position it's in now. In fact, if I shine the torch in from there, that might be a little easier. Yes. I'm just going to mark on the top there with a Sharpie. Oh, that's a bit broad, isn't it? But if we do the other side as well, and that one is pretty much dead straight across. So I think the first thing I'll do is just turn them both anti-clockwise by about a quarter of a turn and see what effect that has. Right, so they're both now about a quarter of a turn anti-clockwise. Now, can I just put it down without putting the bottom on? I think I can. Yeah, that's fine. So power up. Oh, we need the signal generator on again, don't we? Oh, this record play switch is a bit noisy as well, isn't it? We'll have to sort that out as well, but for the time being, let's just readjust these to 0 dB. Now, and record at that. That should be enough. Alright, that's made it worse, hasn't it? Okay, so I want to go back the other way. Okay, power off. So, back to where they were. That's back to where they were, so I'm now going to give them about a quarter of a turn clockwise. Oh, so that's both about a quarter of a turn clockwise. That hasn't changed, that's pleasing. Reset counter and record at that for a bit. That should be enough. That's closer, isn't it? We've gone the right way, but they're now both a little bit on the low side. Right, power off. Right, back a bit, but not all the way. Get my screwdriver engaged. Yeah, and ooh, need the torch to see this one. Again, back a bit, but not all the way. Right, let's try that. I'm sure there must be a better way of doing it than this. Power up. Okay, pleasingly, the actual levels haven't really changed much, so reset counter and record. That should do. That's the previous recording, and here's our new recording. Left now is bang on. So let's just tweak the right channel a tiny fraction. Now, is it clockwise or anti-clockwise? Tiny fraction anti-clockwise I think it needs to go, doesn't it? Right, let's try that. Power off. So a tiny fraction anti-clockwise I think on this pot. There. Power on. Oscillator still going, yes. They have changed slightly, haven't they? That could just be because I'm knocking the pots as I'm turning the thing over. So they're bang on. Reset counter and record. That should be enough. Right, that's the previous recording. And there is our new recording. So how are we doing? Do you know what? I don't think I'm going to get it any better than that, so I think I'm going to leave it there. That is pretty good. I'm happy with that. Now, next thing we need to adjust is the recording level for chrome tape, and apparently we can't adjust it. So all we can do is try another recording, this time on a chrome tape, and make sure it reads -3 dB on the level meters. So let's try that. Right, chrome tape. Let's wind it on a little bit. Right. Oh, chrome. These pots are very noisy. That's making it quite difficult to set the level because they're so noisy. Yeah. That's pretty good. Right, let's record at that. That'll do. Back a bit. Should read -3. It's reading more like -4, isn't it? But what was the tolerance on this? So it was -3 plus or minus 1.5. Oh, this one's got back up to -3 now, and that one's a bit closer to -3 now. I think that's within spec. Let's try another test recording, because that was improving, wasn't it? Let's just let that run for a bit longer. Right, that's been recording for about 4 minutes now, so let's see how that's doing. That is fairly good. That's within spec, innit? I'm happy with that. Right, next is frequency response adjustment, which looks like we have to record 1000 Hz and 10,000 Hz at -20 VU, which is right down the bottom end of the scale, and make sure there's no more than 1.5 dB of difference between the two. Right, got 1 kHz going at the moment, so let's adjust the recording levels to -20 on the VU meters. So got the problem of the noisy pot, but we can do it, I think. Let's clean that up a bit. There we are, that's exactly -20 on both. So I've reset the counter, so we'll start recording at that. Then when the counter reaches 10, I'll switch to 10 kHz. And switch to 10 kHz. So this is our 1 kHz, and that is reading -20 as it should. Now we're 10 kHz. A little bit high, isn't it? Just pop the top off again because I want to get some contact cleaner on these sliders, just make it a bit easier to set the levels. So hopefully that will have improved matters slightly. Right, to adjust the frequency response we need to twiddle VR6 and VR6B, and if you look at the circuit diagram, VR6 and 6B are actually the bias. So it looks like it's going to be the same procedure really, except this time we're adjusting VR6 and 6B, which are up here. So I'll make an adjustment, flip it over and test, see if I need to adjust it any further, make another adjustment, flip it over and test, and so on and so forth. So I won't bore you with all that, but what I will do is mark the current position of these two pots. I've got a bit of a better pen this time, a bit of a finer tip. This is purely so if I need to, I can restore the pot back to exactly where it is currently. Yeah, So that's the current position marked, and I think I'll start again by giving them both a bit of a turn clockwise. This actually turned out to be the wrong way. Both pots eventually needed to be turned anti-clockwise from their original positions. So that's turned both clockwise. Let's have a test. Right, after a bit of fiddling about, I think I've got this pretty good now. So this is playing back a recording I've just made at 1 kHz, and it's just maybe fractionally under -20. Now this is the 10 kHz tone which I've just recorded, and yeah, again, maybe just fractionally under -20. I think the left maybe a little bit more down than the right, but it's pretty close, and I think that's within spec, so I'm going to leave it there. Right, just as a final sanity check, I'm going to retry the level recording, the 0 dB 333 Hz tone, make sure that still reads 0 dB on these meters. After making all those adjustments, make sure we haven't messed up the level, and that's at the beginning of this tape. About there. Not bad, is it? Right, very, very slightly too high. Left, again slightly too high, but not too bad. That's okay. Right, I think it's time for a test. So I've got it hooked up to a CD player. What I'll do is I'll copy a track from the YouTube audio library, which I've transferred to a CD, onto my TDK SAX tape, which is Chrome. Again, I'll do it once with Dolby switched off, and again with Dolby switched on, so we can do a comparison, and I'll play those recordings back to you and give you a direct feed of the playback of the deck. Our recording level's pretty good, and we're set to Chrome position, Dolby off. So let's start recording. Just wait till the tape's off the leader and hit play on the CD. Right, that's the non-Dolby version. So let's turn Dolby on and record again with Dolby on.